Hey everyone, Dan here. Now before I get on with the September film ranking, I want to address the Hollywood writers and actor strikes because some progress has been made. So this probably will be my last word on it, but I feel like as a film fan and as a creator who covers films and whatnot with a platform, I feel it's really important to inform you about it and just to be aware of it because, you know, making sure that workers get a fair pay and making sure that AI is regulated, it's important, and I'm glad that, you know, negotiations are happening. It's not fully over yet, but I think, you know, progress is being made, and that's a very good thing. And I want to just address it, show my support, and so I probably won't discuss it further, but I want to just make you all aware of it. So let's get on with the ranking. Do you remember the 21st night of September? It's not even the 21st September, but anyway, the punchline, it's the September film ranking. So again, we got another shorter list this time. It's only 8 films that we're going to be covering this time. But yeah, and it's also just it's a less sort of hectic month, no kind of masterpiece standout films for me. It's just kind of a chill month, really. I am running out of things to actually say in these segments, so let's just get on with it.
Brian, that's more ridiculous than the theory of why Tom Cruise runs in all his movies.
Ridley Scott's Legend kind of epitomizes why I don't care for most fantasy kind of stories, because this film, it's the most wishy-washy kind of story that you can ever tell. You know, it's about a knight who wants to save this princess that he loves from an evil, dark overlord, and there's magical creatures that help him along the way. It's so poorly defined, and what separates this fantasy world from any other, you know, it's the most generic kind of story that you could have told, with generic characters and such poorly defined world building. And at 90 minutes as well, only an hour and a half, it's an absolute slog, and I genuinely can barely remember anything that happened. Although I will say a couple of good things. It's a Ridley Scott film. He directed it, so it looks very nice. You know, can't take that away from the film. And there's a really cool dance scene where Mia Sara dances with a sentient dress, which is really cool. And yes, that is the same actress of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But overall, in terms of Tom Cruise films, still better than Rain Man.
Pan's Labyrinth.
He's grossly overrated.
Right, Pan's Labyrinth it's the bane of my existence, this bloody film is. And I rewatched it because it's actually one of the films I've studied for my film class, and it was actually the first one that we studied, and I decided to rewatch it for like revision purposes, just refreshing like my memory on it, because it was about a year ago now. Pretty scary. But overall, like, I don't dislike this film, but it's just so overhyped for me, and I found it thoroughly just disappointing. I think having rewatched it, understanding it, and also academically studying it, you know, the use of like film form, like cinematography, mise-en-scène, sound, editing and whatnot, and also understanding the context of how the film came about and also about the Spanish Civil War. Like, I understand it, but I also understand why I don't love it and connect with it, because the thing is, it's quite a simple film when you break it down. It's quite a simple kind of good versus evil mentality. You know, Del Toro, learning about context, Del Toro hates the elite, and I agree with him. I do agree with him. But in this film, it's very, very good versus evil, very black and white. There isn't really much nuance in that way. But the thing is, every single academic and article and list which talked about, you know, movies that everyone should watch, and oftentimes they don't talk about films post-millennial. Pan's Labyrinth is always there, and I just don't see that. I just don't see what's so profound and special. I genuinely don't. But the thing is, I can understand why this is a really good starting point for, like, studying film for the first time, because it's a very visual film, and Del Toro has a very vivid imagination when it comes to his visuals. You know, the creature design is fantastic, the set design, the use of colour, like, you know, the blue hues, and it's really great in that way. And there's also some really good characters, like Ophelia is a really nice, great main protagonist and performed excellently for the child actor. Mercedes is a brilliant character, and I really like the stuff with her. The Dr. Fierro, I think, isn't it? Yeah, he's great too. And stuff like the Pale Man scene it still gets me. It still gets me, that scene. That is fantastic. But overall, I just don't really care much for the story, and it's all, for me, it's really epitomized in the villain, Captain Vidal. This tosser, He is just the bane of my existence. I have seen D-tier Marvel villains with more nuance and personality to him, because there is no attempt to make you understand that this guy is a human. He just does bad thing after bad thing, and it feels honestly just really overbearing. It's like, do you get that this guy's an arsehole? Do you get it? Well, we'll make sure you get it. And it's like, I get it, alright? I get it from the first scene, for Christ's sake. But the lack of nuance for me, it ultimately just feels so frustrating, because yes, fascism is horrible, but he's still human, and you've got to, you can't just paint. He may as well be one of the other fairy tale creatures and monsters that Ophelia meets. He may as well just be that. But in the end of the film, he kind of becomes that, with the kind of the scar on his face, but it's just like, there's so much potential, and it just throws it down the bin, for just this stereotypical, one-dimensional, cartoon, mustache-twirling villain with no substance for me. And, because of that, I really don't find a lot of the Spanish Civil War stuff that engaging, and I'm just kind of waiting for the fairy tale fantasy stuff to, properly kick in again. But don't get me wrong, I do understand why people love this film, and I'm jealous more than anything. I wish that I could hold it in the same high regard as everybody else, but I just don't, and I'm going to be honest about that. I'm not going to sugarcoat my opinions just to... this is just how I feel, and this is my reaction, and I just didn't connect with it. And having studied it, I feel like I understand it, but yeah, I do connect with certain parts of it. I mean, the last 20 minutes is great, the Pale Man stuff is great, the characters, some of them are pretty good, but somebody just needs to find Vidal a personality, for Christ's sake. Hey Johnny, did you find what we're looking for? No, pal, all I found was this DVD of the Clint Eastwood Jersey Boys movie. Oh yeah, that's real bland. Just like Captain Vidal.
He grabbed a pencil-thin branch in his hands and actually tried to swing to the neighbor's tree like he was freaking Tarzan.
Okay, I'm going to be real with you, Chief. I'm just kind of here for the Phil Collins songs, because, Jesus Christ, they are absolute bangers. And the film's pretty good too. But in all seriousness, I do genuinely really enjoy this film. I think it's got some fantastic elements to it, but it doesn't fully come together as a whole. Let's talk about the good. So, it looks fantastic. It's got some of the best animation of Disney, and some of the sequences, like the swinging scenes, are really well shot and animated, and just very dynamic looking. And it's really visually, it's great, and the visual storytelling is very effective when there's no dialogue. And I would have been really interested to see a film with no dialogue, but it was just the visuals telling the story, and the Phil Collins songs maybe as to kind of express the emotions. It would have been experimental, it would have been different, but it would have been really interesting, I think, but they don't go down that route. But as it is, it's a pretty wholesome story. Tarzan, and he falls in love with the Jane Foster lady. It's really wholesome stuff, but there are some things knocking it down. I mean, you've got some dumbass comic relief characters who just serve no purpose in the film. Oh, and Kerjak, the kind of reconciliation at the end with Kerjak, who's like Tarzan's adopted father. Horse crap. Kerjak has not shown an ounce of kindness to Tarzan, so what that was about, I have no idea. Yeah, the film is a little bit of a step down from some of the other 90s Disney films, especially considering this came off of the back of Hercules and Mulan, two of my personal favourites. But overall, I do still enjoy it enough. It's a fun enough time.
Hello, I am a robot.
Fritz Lang's Metropolis, the kind of OG sci-fi film, really, is, to quote my film teacher, expressionism on steroids. And, well, she's not wrong. It really is. It's so vivid and imaginative. The imagery in this film, it's something else, whether it's the city landscapes or the robot is such an iconic design even nearly a century later. It's genuinely incredible stuff, and it's definitely the best looking silent film that I've seen so far. But as we discussed with Legend, just because something looks nice doesn't mean it's automatically great, and I will concede that. But I think Metropolis is great, and I feel like it's one that will definitely get better as I think back on it more, because I think when I watched it first, I still really enjoyed it, but I think it was more the runtime of 2.5 hours. It doesn't need to be that long. It's definitely a bit too long. You could shave half an hour off it, and it would still work wonders. But I think the overall ideas and themes of what Metropolis presents, I think are really interesting, and it keeps you thinking about them long after you've watched it. And I think that's why I really connected with this film. Speaking of the visuals quickly, there was a little moment, this is going to sound really trivial, but there was a moment where they sort of show like a clock, and it's not got 12 hours, but rather 10 hours. And something as simple as that, just in the background, there's no real attention drawn to it, but that made me have so many questions about, how could the world work? How have they got to the point where they use 10-hour days, or, 20-hour days instead of 24 hours? do 9-to-5 jobs still exist, or do they not? And if so, how do these things alter? Something as simple as that has so much story potential, and it flashes out the world in just such a organic way for me. And that's the key part of the world building. The plot isn't the focus here. It's very much an experience. You are immersed in this living, breathing society, and everything has an effect on each other. You've sort of got sort of vignette storytelling, because you've got the main guy, Frida, I think his name was, but he's in an upper class society, and his dad kind of rules over the city, then he meets the girl Maria, and he tries to find her, so he ends up going into the working class underground city. And then also you've got the mad scientist with the robot, and the father wants to kind of use the robot to make her look like Maria and sort of taint her image to the working class people. And I do genuinely think that's really interesting, because it shows that all these elements, when they sort of bleed into each other. So as I said, the robot subplot, you've got the father who runs the city, who we've seen before, and he influences events, and everything influences. It's almost like circular in a way. I mean, for me, the stuff with the robot was probably the most interesting part of the film. I found that very interesting, kind of human identity and what it means to be human, and it's not just physical appearances, but it's what you stand for. So Maria very much stood for, she stood for peace and whatnot, and then when the robot, Maria, starts talking about violence, Frida, he's like, no, that's not the real Maria, she's about love, not hate. And admittedly, it's quite simple, but for the 20s, it was very effective, and I think you can see the influence of that in so many other projects. I mean, Blade Runner comes to mind. I mean, I love Blade Runner, but overall, I really enjoy Metropolis, but I get that it's maybe not everyone's cup of tea, but I really liked it.
Before I go, I just want to tell you were
Captain
fantastic.
Here's another film for school, Captain Fantastic, which I rewatched in class, and it was still very good. It's not my favourite of the films I'm studying, although it's better than Pan's Labyrinth, but, some of my favourites that we've done so far, like Inception, City of God, are achieving something grander. So Captain Fantastic is very low-key in that regard, so I can't really rate it higher, but I do really like it. First of all, it's a really well-made film. The direction, the cinematography is so crisp and gorgeous. There's great use of colour, and it's just a really nice-looking film. There's some great performances, especially from Viggo Mortensen as Ben. He's a great lead for the film. And the kids who make up his family, I think they're all great actors in this as well. And the kind of conflicting of ideologies between Ben and Jack, who's the grandfather, it's all in the wake of Ben's wife's death, and they want to try and go to the funeral, but because they live off grid, Jack doesn't want them to. And it's this kind of conflict of ideology, which is very interesting, because there's no clear villain. Both parties make bad choices, but you also can understand where they're coming from at points. It's a really interesting film about parenting and the kind of different ideologies and points of view. Both parties also do bring up good points about where the other parent might be wrong and whatnot, and it's compelling stuff, and it's great for study and debating, and it's very good for that. Not a lot else I can say. It's just a really solid film, and I would highly recommend it.
Sir Sim, you've come to...
Rushmore is Wes Anderson's second film, and currently I would say it's my favourite, because I'll be honest, the other two that I've watched, French Dispatch and even Fantastic Mr. Fox, whilst I don't hate them, I didn't really connect with them an awful lot, and I found myself quite emotionally disconnected to them. And maybe not so much Mr. Fox, but definitely French Dispatch. It really did feel like style over substance. It was just pretty shots, but there was no purpose to them. I felt very alienated. But Rushmore, I think, is a lot better. It's got a perfect blend of style and substance, because the style furthers the story. There's a point to it, I feel. Wes Anderson's quite well known for his symmetrical shots and all that, and I think when that's used, it's more towards the start of the film, when Max, Jason Schwartzman's character, feels like he has his life sort of figured out. He runs the school in his mind. He's got all the after-school extracurricular clubs, and he thinks he's in a relationship with one of the teachers, Miss Cross. But then, when everything starts to go to pot, and Bloom, Bill Murray's character, basically pranks him, essentially. And it's a massive prank war, but basically, once they start sort of rifting apart and trying to sabotage each other, the shots are no longer symmetrical. There's that one shot, the high angle, that looks down upon Max next to the bonfire, and then Max is also not in the centre of the frame. He's maybe further to the right or further to the left. It serves a point, and I felt like I felt the emotions that I was supposed to feel. It's quite a funny film in the fact, it's sort of got that kind of cringe comedy because of the plot of Max trying to, woo his teacher. He's a massive simp for her. It's a bit like The Graduate in the way, kind of the whole, age gap, it's really dodgy and it shouldn't work, but it's kind of funny because there's a sense of like tongue-in-cheek irony about it all. And also, Max, he's young, he's naive, he doesn't really know any better. So instead of it feeling uncomfortable to watch, you want to see him progress and mature as a person, and it makes it a lot more pleasant to watch. But you also have some nice sort of more melancholic moments, more so with Bloom, who Bill Murray plays, and he's really great in this film, Bill Murray. But his character is quite interesting, and you do feel quite sympathetic towards him, a middle-aged man who just is kind of directionless in life, and just I think it's very compelling, and I just overall really enjoy this film, and is my favourite of Wes Anderson's filmography so far. I will check out more, don't worry.
That's just how it goes for poor Pinocchio.
Ha! And people think I have a bias against Del Toro. No, it's just that I don't really click with Pan's Labyrinth. But anyway, the point is, this Pinocchio movie from last year, very bloody good. I mean, this film, the animation, first of all, stop motion, will always be probably the most timeless form of animation. And it's excellent here. The character designs are so vivid and expressive, and they're just great, and the movements are brilliant, and the overall look and feel of the film, the aesthetics are brilliant. It's great use of colour. You've got the sort of natural light in a lot of the earlier stuff when Pinocchio is created, and, with Geppetto. And then also you have, when he's in the boot camp, you have the harsher white and red lights, as well as the pitch black sky. I think great use of, like, mise-en-scène and colour, and it's a real treat for the eyes. Also, the voice acting is terrific. Ewan McGregor as Jiminy Cricket. David Bradley, the first Doctor, William Hartnell as Geppetto, he's great. The lad who played Pinocchio himself, he's brilliant. It's got some great songs in there. Yeah, why were none of the songs nominated for, like, best song at the Oscars? Come on, although, to be fair, Natu Natu from RRR is just, like, epic. It's so epic. But the best part about this film, I think, is the whole morality angle. Because obviously, as we know, Del Toro rightfully hates the elite, alright? He hates them. And I think having this version of Pinocchio set in Mussolini, Italy, and with the rise of fascism, and, Pinocchio questioning what's right and what's wrong, and, it's not as simple as lying is bad. I think it's maybe... I think having that kind of fascist sort of background, I think, makes the morality tale a lot more nuanced and compelling, and I think it's such a fresh interpretation of this classic story, but it's not quite my favourite of the month. I have not seen Psycho until the other day for about 5 years. It's been a while. Basically, think when I first started doing Clack of the Geek, that was when I first watched Psycho. And I actually remember, I was having a chat when I watched it around the time, I remember saying to, like, my dad, I'd love to do a video on Psycho, and I remember him saying, you may be a bit too young, Dan, to do a video on Psycho, but now, 5 years later, I could talk about Psycho. It's amazing, it still is. It's definitely not my favourite Hitchcock film. Since I watched this years ago, I have now seen other Hitchcock films, and I do prefer, like, Vertigo and Rear Window, but overall, I think this is still brilliant. It's obviously his most iconic film, and also it's probably the one that gets the suspense the best, like, just so many sequences, he sort of stretches the suspense like an elastic band, and it's just, you're just on the edge of your seat. The conversation between Marion and Norman Bates when he's, talking about, we all go a little mad sometimes, that whole, like, 8-minute section is genuinely incredible, like, whether it's the filmmaking, some brilliant cinematography, very dynamic shots, great use of lighting, great use of, like, low-key lighting, or Anthony Perkins' performance, he's incredible in this film. That final shot still creeps me out. It is just such a fascinating film to watch unfold and see all the twists and turns. It's genuine, it's such an iconic film now, but it, back in 1960, I can't imagine what people would have been like. It was just, it's so, why Psycho is amazing. I think it's not perfect. I do think the exposition dump at the end is a bit naff and does definitely dampen the film, I think. But overall, I do genuinely still love it. It's fantastic. Oh, another thing quickly. Bernard Herrmann's score genuinely gives me it gives me the creeps. That score is genuinely incredible. And a little bit of trivia to end the ranking off. If you heard in the interlude, the Chubby Checker Psycho part, that's actually from Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire. And if you listen to that little section, you can hear the main Psycho theme in the beats of that song. And I thought that was a really clever little detail. So there you have it. And with that, that's the September ranking done, and we're now 3/4 into 2023, which is pretty bloody scary. But anyway, take care. Hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to like and subscribe and share and all that great stuff. What did you think of any of the films I've discussed? What did you see this month? And with my viewing of Psycho, the spooky season of movie watching can well and truly begin. I'll see you next time.